What's good, y'all? Welcome to the John Katz Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am joined by a very special guest today, Miss Emily Cummings. Thank you for coming on the show, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Emily is a yoga and Pilates instructor and entrepreneur and body language expert, all kinds of interesting stuff to get into. You can find her everywhere, A State of Emily on social, and her website also astateofemily.com if you want to get into the yoga community or take some classes or buy some cool clothes or something like that. So let's just jump right into it. What is yoga? I feel like it's one of those things where we all have heard it, and then the people we know who do it are just obsessed with it and swear by it, and then the rest of us are just kind of unsure what's going on there. You know, is it exercise? Is it stretching? Is it meditation? What is a combination of all of those? What are we doing with yoga for the layman?
So yoga is an ancient philosophy. It spans across many different cultures and draws from a bunch of different philosophical viewpoints, Buddhism, Taoism, and it's essentially 8 different limbs to yoga, and they cover the physical practice, which is just one small aspect of the practice, which was essentially created to prepare the body for meditation. So what it's kind of become in Western culture is something a little bit different, but that was like essentially what asana, our physical practice, was created to kind of prepare the body to go into a state of deep relaxation and meditation. And the rest of the limbs of yoga cover breath work, forms of concentration, meditation, connection to source, God, higher power. So there is kind of that spiritual aspect to it. And then the other parts of it are kind of like philosophies on how to sort of live your life, what suggestions of how to kind of take care of yourself and your energy and live a peaceful life. So all those elements come together to kind of create the philosophy of yoga, but there's so many different avenues that you can go down with it, so many different schools of thought and ways to study it, that it really becomes just a different experience for each person. It's kind of like, you know, if you're looking for a therapist or something, that experience of looking for a therapist is going to be very different for each person. Like each person is going to want something different out of that experience. And so yoga is kind of a similar thing, where what people practice now and why people love it so much is because it's like this experience of being embodied and being in your body, and it feels good and it makes you feel good, and it's just kind of taking time out of your everyday life to kind of just spend time with you and be present with yourself. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Perfect. I like that it does go beyond. I think a lot of people just think, oh, I'm doing these relaxating stretches and so forth. But yeah, it's the spirituality aspect. And what you touched on there too reminded me kind of like, a good word is intent. People that talk about that a lot with psychedelics and stuff. Like you said, everyone kind of has their different purpose of doing it. What's their intent going in? I like that it's tied into the meditation realm. It's something I'm trying to get. Anything that focuses you and kind of quiets the world, I'm learning, is very beneficial.
Yes, most definitely. I don't know if you know who Rumi is, but there's like a quote by him that says that God is found in silence, and that anything else beyond that is just a poor translation. So it's like, even the way that we express ourselves through language is like a construct of the ego. It's like dualistic. It's just a part of the human condition. So as soon as we start to like try to describe source or God or that feeling of connection with like higher consciousness, it becomes an experience of the ego. And so that's kind of like the
it gets lost.
thing about it.
It gets lost. You can't describe that stuff. I was just talking about that recently with the strange experience I had, and I did liken it to a dream or a psychedelic trip. It's like when you come out of it, you could never really articulate that feeling of connection.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in that state, it all makes sense. And then you kind of blink and you're hit with all the external stimulus again, and you're right back with it's that battle of the human condition.
Well, so much of our lives are like built around the premise of creating noise, creating distraction, feeding the experience of the ego, seeking gratification, validation, seeking pleasure, seeking or trying to avoid discomfort, avoid pain, all of these things. And that's the level of consciousness that the majority of people reside in. And I think we all kind of like move in and out through these different opportunities for spiritual awakening, whether it's like yoga practice or meditation or whatever it is. We start to like internally reflect, and then we have those moments where we like experience the samadhi, or the experience of higher consciousness and being one with like source or God. And so we kind of move in and out of these layers of how we experience the world. But I think if someone's like really completely not awake at all, then they're going to function like mostly predominantly from that ego state.
Yes. A lot of the smartest people are in that ego state only. You know, they're ultra intelligent, but they're not willing. It's almost like they're too pragmatic because they're so smart. They're not even willing to. And I also look, I say it all the time. You can't walk around in like a constant state of awe, because you'd be too far in that direction. But yeah, I like to say you should have it running in the background somewhere, that just kind of that appreciation of how mystical and magical reality really is. People think it's all explained, and you know, none of it is.
It's like an act of letting go. So I think often like some of the smartest people, or some of the people that have these big platforms or are influential or whatever it is, it's like they're very attached to their ideas or their perspective. And it's like, I think that's like a humbling in a sense, to be able to say like, actually, I know nothing. Like, actually, if you can just let it all go, like let go of your attachment, then it's like, that really to me is like freedom. That's like being in the present, where it's just like, I know nothing, I am nothing, I'm being in this moment, you know. I think the more we are like holding on to this stuff, like holding on to our ideas or our self-image or whatever, it's like creates resistance, it creates challenge for us, you know.
That's the ego, right? I think people don't want to be vulnerable, like you said, you know. And even what I notice in a lot of people, even they can't even do it when they're alone.
No.
You know, I always tell when I give people advice in my life, because they're so caught up in what's external stuff and I go like, when you're alone, that's when you can really at least then be honest with yourself, you know, because a lot of people can't even do that. They're just so afraid to even go there and feel those things in the first place.
Yeah, I agree.
How'd you get into all this stuff? What's your background? Were you always passionate about energy and meditation and yoga and so forth?
No, I was not. I've always been a dancer. I started dancing when I was really little and was very passionate about it. Started dancing professionally as a child. And I stopped dancing when I was like 19. And that was kind of like a defining time for me, because my whole life up until that point had been so focused on being a dancer. And when that all kind of fell apart, and that ended up not being the path that I was going to carry on with for my adult life, I kind of lost my sense of self and had no idea who I was, like most people at the age of 19. And I just started kind of going down this crazy path of like partying and like getting really into my social life and just getting really into like destructive behaviors and patterns and playing through all of that kind of stuff. And I reached a point in my 20s when I was just like, none of this is working for me. Like, this is just not, I can't go on like this. And that was actually when I found yoga, and I started practicing a lot, and it kind of brought me back into that, the passion I had for dance and reconnecting to what I truly loved to do, which is move. And so I practiced for a long time before I ever even considered teaching. I was like working in advertising for a while and doing art direction and stuff like that. And then eventually like all the pieces kind of fell into place, and I ended up doing my yoga teacher training, and it was like really a light bulb went off where I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've just been doing that ever since.
I love hearing that people are actually doing something they're passionate about. And it is kind of, I guess, tangentially related, like you said, with the dance stuff, using your body, the body movement. So there is kind of like a segue in there. But yeah, for sure, most people spend most of their time doing stuff they don't want to do out of obligation or everything else. It's very rare.
It's like a very, it's crazy for me to think of that. I feel like I've always been on this, like the path of my spiritual purpose. I've been on my whole life, whether I was like, conscious of it or not. And it's like, just, I've been pushed out of like situations that were not good for me. I can't imagine having resisted that or insisting on staying in a situation that I'm miserable or unhappy. It's like I've always had this kind of like need to like expand and grow, and it's like when I start to feel like I'm getting stagnant or I'm unhappy, it's like I have to do something about it. you know
Yeah, and I like this combo. I mean, because I've battled the stagnancy stuff, my whole life. And as I get older and, different changes, is yeah, you start to really appreciate. I was just talking to the last guest about what's going to matter at the end of your life. What did you spend your time and energy on? And I never used to think about it too much. And I just, because I do enjoy alone time and quiet time and all that. But you got to find the pockets of meaning where you can. I think that's the main thing, is putting meaning in somebody's life. I imagine a lot of the people that come to you and participate in this are doing it because they're trying to heal, maybe in some sense, or some sort of void. They're searching for some sort of meaning. What do you find with people like in modern society? That's what seems to be plaguing people the most. There's definitely a malaise, it seems, and maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I feel like people are not as happy as they used to be.
I think people feel lonely, like there's like a sense of lacking purpose or lacking meaning. And I think people also feel not just disconnected from others, but probably disconnected from themselves. Like I think that there's also, in the last few years, it's like there's been so much shifting and so much coming to light, and it really like kind of comes back to what I was saying, where it's like if you are holding on, you're making it so much harder for yourself. You really are. Like through all of this stuff, it's like if you can't just like go with the flow kind of in a way. Like I know that sounds like pretty like hippy dippy of me to say that, but it's like I see people that are trying so hard to hold together this construct of reality because it makes them feel safe, and that really like is at the root of all of this stuff that's gone on in the last couple of years. Is that Western culture, we have no spiritual awareness of the experience of death. All we're taught about death is that like you should be afraid of it,
right,
that it's gonna happen one day and you should be fucking scared. And it's like in other cultures like Buddhism and Taoism and all these things, that's not the way that death is you practice death through life. Like death is like a natural transition that like you should be accepting of, you should be like preparing yourself for. And so they don't have that same fear that we have, where it's like, and I think that that's so much of what people hold on to, their attachment to the government, to the narratives that they're told through the media, all this stuff. It's like, it's holding together this little box that keeps them safe, where they're like, I am safe here if I keep believing this. But they know in their soul, they know deep down that that is an untruth. And so they live in conflict with that constantly. And I think that really is like what most people are struggling with at the end of the day.
That was really well said. Yeah. Yeah. People are way too caught up in meaningless external stuff. I always say about dying in a nice peaceful, I go, yeah, everybody dies, right? So to me, that's not something to be scared. You go, the worst thing that can happen to someone is you die, and it happens to everybody, right? And it doesn't matter if you're Bill Gates or you're the Walmart cashier. You're not taking all those mansions and cars with you, and we all end up in the ground or ashes one day. To me, that's such a freeing feeling. You're talking about like the hippie stuff or whatever. I don't know that that's not a better lifestyle. If you're living in a hippie commune, right, and you're happy and connected and great people around you, and you're, eating good and doing psychedelics and having orgies or whatever, you're going to look back in your life and probably have a lot of really meaningful memories and experiences versus, let's say, you're a stockbroker and maybe you're not passionate about stocks, but you got into it, you're decent at math, and you put in 14 hours a day staring at a computer screen and Excel sheets, you're not going to look back at 1 hour of that as feeling like it was meaningful, other than maybe that you made a good living and you could leave your family some money and stuff like that. But I talk a little bit about the body. I feel like the body language thing, you know, talking about people being guarded and not in touch with themselves, that's got to be huge, because to be able to express yourself physically, I think is like one of the scariest things for people. And they are so out of touch with who they really are. Most people I encounter do not seem authentic to me. And I feel like they're either, it's because they're afraid and they're worried about what everyone's going to think, and they're thinking about all these external, or they just don't even know themselves well enough to be authentic if they wanted to. They're just, you know, they're kind of mirroring what they think they're supposed to be, and they've never actually sat down and thought about it. But what do you think about it? Do you think people are afraid to show who they are, or you think they just don't know who they are? You think it's a combination of all that?
I think it can be a combination of any and all of those things. Like, I think that we've been like mostly brainwashed our whole lives. Like, most people have been indoctrinated through schooling, and then they watch TV and consume media constantly. And so it takes like a very concerted effort to separate yourself from that and actually like figure out who you are apart from all of that kind of stuff. But it's kind of crazy teaching. You see how little body awareness people have when they first start. And that's something I truly love about teaching, is like watching people's progression with their practice, like watching and seeing how much my students grow and change and get stronger, and their connection to their bodies changes. But it's like, it really has shocked me over the years to see like how little body awareness people are capable of having. And I can kind of relate to this from, you know, thinking back. I mean, I've never been like that because I've always been like a dancer and have connected with my body in that way. But like, there have been times where it's like my mind was so noisy that I wasn't aware of like anything going on around me without that like layer of my noisy mind. And that I think is what's going on for most people, is that it's like you're saying to them, put your right hand here or whatever, you know, and they are so busy in their head that they're not even listening. They can't even receive from you, you know?
Yeah, I think people can go their whole lives just in the noise. See, for me personally, that's what I think for most people, and for me personally, you almost have to go through some stuff to even force you to sit there and reflect on a lot of that anyway. But there is just so much noise. I think as you get older, you really start to feel some of that existential stuff. But definitely I see with younger people, they're just going and going and going. It's just all about this. They're not questioning any of it. They don't know. I mean, forgetting even basics. People don't know where other countries are or any of the history or anything like that. That's just, you know, for starters. But they're certainly not pondering about the universe and life and spirituality or anything of the sort. It is strange. I can't imagine hundreds or thousands of years ago that anybody was like that. There was no noise.
Oh.
It's all noise. That's what I'm realizing, is everything is meaningless noise. There's very little in this world that's meaningful, and everything else is really kind of noisy and forgettable.
Yes. And like, a lot of things are created specifically to keep people distracted. It's like, how many people that do experience these moments in their lives where things are challenging and difficult and uncomfortable, and the immediate reaction is, I'm going to drink alcohol to deal with this. And it's like, what does alcohol do? It like completely disconnects you from your consciousness. Like, if you drink too much of it, you are literally unconscious. Like, it lowers your vibration. It's a depressant. It's like, and that is most people's coping mechanism, is to drink, to go somewhere loud, to like, you know. And there's so many other ways, even like social media. It's like developing an addiction to social media. It's like constant other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, constant stimulation. That's like just not, our brains were not created to consume this level of just stimulation constantly.
Definitely not. I say all the time, I think kids' brains are different already than ours. Not to get into a whole, I've been accused of having juvenoia, where you think the last generation's not as good or was better than the current one and so forth. There are certainly advantages we have now. But yeah, generally speaking, for people that are adults and were introduced to this tech as adults, it's never going to be a natural thing for us. I think these babies born with tablets in their hands, I feel like their brain's already different because
Yeah.
they're experiencing a type of stimulus while their actual brain is forming, which is not something that, I mean, you seem a bit younger, but it's not something I ever did. By the time I had a computer or internet or something, I was a full adult. I don't think it's ever going to intertwine with us. And not to mention, I mean, humans spent hundreds of thousands of years doing very specific things. Once heard somebody say that if you want to feel healthy, you should on a regular basis either make something with your hands, build or make something with your hands, or plant stuff in the ground. Because those two things we evolved and did for a couple 100,000 years, and then we all just kind of stopped. And now the majority of us are using that energy for stuff that didn't even exist a couple decades ago. No one's making anything with their hands. No one's planting, I mean, unless you have a garden. But yeah, you could see how people have become so detached from the natural world. And like you said, it's easier now to purposefully distract and manipulate people, trying to sell them products or get clicks on your app or your website. So you find you must get gratification out of seeing this stuff in real life helping people, right? Like you said, watching people become comfortable with their body. You see the way someone comes in versus how they are after a while, and even in just their life, right? What's the main change you see in people when they really start taking this seriously?
I mean, that is definitely the most gratifying thing. And I'm so grateful that I get to do what I do because I really do love it. And there's so, that experience of like just genuine moments of like actually feeling like you're making a difference for other people is like really, really rewarding. But in my Pilates classes, for example, I have like solid crew of like regular people that always come to my classes, especially at one studio that I teach at. And it's like they're all so strong and like serious now, and it's like they come every week and they're all friends now. So it's like they went from being like strangers to now having this little community that they do this together, and it's like we grow together. It's like I come up with something new that we haven't done before, and they're excited to try it, and we work on it for a week, and then it's just there's like a camaraderie to it, and like it's fun to see how they came in knowing nothing, and then it's like I feel like they catch up even to me like so quickly, and it keeps me like pushing me forward, learning new things. And so that like with the Pilates stuff, like that's really fun. Like you can really like physically see people's bodies change. With yoga, it's a little bit more, obviously the same kind of like creating that sense of community with people. And just I think the way I teach yoga, every yoga teacher is different. Every yoga teacher has like a different style. But the way that I teach yoga is just kind of like, I just want to hold space for people's experience. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to lead from a space that feels like natural and authentic to me. And for some people that feels really good for their bodies. And for some people that's like really challenging for their bodies. But either way, their experience is okay with me. Like I'm not trying to like force them to have any type of particular experience, whatever. I just want to hold space for the entirety of their experience. And I think for me that's like, it's like a very personal experience. It's a very individual experience. And so there's like those feedback moments where people come up to me and they tell me like how much of a difference my teaching has made to them, or even just one class in particular. If someone comes up to me and they tell me like I was crying, like to me that's like touches like my heart, where I'm just like, I'm so glad that you were able to like feel something, because that is so much of like what I think we live in resistance to, is just feeling like we like are so many people are like I try to just
they're afraid of it.
Yes, like we operate on this like surface level of experience where it's like okay, did that, next thing, next thing, next thing. And I try to slow people down in their practice and be like, just be in this position, in this moment. Like, stop anticipating what's coming next. Like, don't worry about what we've already done. Like, just feel into your body, into these different spaces in your body. And I don't know, people really do gets like energy moving, and they release things and they feel things, and it opens them up. And it's like, imagine if you've just been like a tense little,
Oh, I can imagine.
you know, and you
Yeah.
finally get into this practice where you start like letting all of that go. It's like, it's so good for you, you know?
I even just was talking about, I went to a concert the other night, Dave Matthews show. I hadn't been in a while, but I said, yeah, just to dance and make a fool of yourself for a while and be all sweaty like that, even alone, it just feels so good for the soul, because you rarely do let loose like that, and you can't in real life. And especially the older you get, the less time you have to just be a sweaty, goofy idiot. And yeah, I think that is the main, to me, that's like the main thing that most people have a problem with. It's just
Yep.
kind of like you said, letting go, being in the present. I know it's something I have a huge issue with. Everybody lives in the past with their regrets, or in the future with their anxiety, and they're very rarely just kind of enjoying the moment, or appreciating the moment even more so. You must see that, manifest in these people's lives then in so many ways too. When they start to feel that way, it's got to improve their relationships and their work performance and all that other stuff that stresses them. That's not that big of a deal.
Most definitely. That's like the biggest takeaway I think of yoga, is like the way you show up in practice. It may seem like it's, you're just working out or whatever, but it's like the way you do one thing is really the way you do all things. And so if you come into this practice and you keep showing up over and over, and you're like integrating these lessons, so you do take it off of your mat and into your life, because it does change you.
I think I'm gonna start taking yoga for real. And what is, I don't even know what Pilates is necessarily. I mean, I kind of had, again, I have like a vague idea. I feel like everyone knows the word, but I think unless you've done it, people couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
Well, so Pilates is a movement modality that was developed by this guy, Joseph Pilates. And he developed it, he was married to a dancer. And so there are like a lot of foundational, like kind of dance elements to it. But he developed it first as like an exercise to do like on the floor on a mat, like similar to yoga. But then he ended up creating and inventing all of these machines. And so there's like the reformer machine, which is like the typical machine that you would see in like a group Pilates class. And it does, like, this machine does so many different things. And it's like, it's such an amazing workout that's like so low impact on your body. Like, it's very like good for your joints, and it's very like toning and elongating, and it's very strengthening, and it all comes from your core. So like the basis of Pilates is like strengthening the core and the spine, and having like mobility and strength in those two areas, and then everything else like builds on top of that.
I need all this stuff badly.
And so then there's a whole bunch of other like apparatuses that he created that like you would do more like in a private one-on-one session with someone. But it's really fun, and people really, really love it. Like, it's when people get into Pilates, they become like obsessed with it.
I hear yoga and Pilates. You always hear it's those things, even the meditation. It's like once somebody gets into it, it's all they want to talk. Dude, you gotta meditate. It's so great.
You feel so good. And it's like, I saw a TikTok actually of this like influencer girl where she was like, I just came back from Pilates and blah, blah, blah. And she's like talking about her class, and she's like, I feel like Pilates is like hot girl physical therapy. And it's like,
or a mental therapy even. Do you get a lot of men in the classes, or mostly women? What's the ratio there?
Yoga, I would say like pretty even. I used to get, like, before the pandemic, I used to have a lot more men in my classes. And I think since the pandemic, one of the studios that I used to teach at shut down. And so that was a studio that like there was a lot of men there. But in Pilates, it's not as many men.
I'd say
But the
Pilates does have a girly connotation. Like I would,
why
I
though?
think it's the name. I would be comfortable telling someone I took a yoga class. I can't imagine telling someone I went to a Pilates class, and I don't know why it has that
I don't know.
feminist, not feminist. That's the wrong word. Feminine is the word I was looking for. I don't know why it has a feminine connotation.
There are some men that come and they really like it, but what I've noticed with men in Pilates is that they have to really get over their ego, because the thing with Pilates is that it's not weight training, and people really get in this mindset where they're like, I have to do everything on the heaviest weight setting, and it's like, actually that's not how this works at all. Like that, the weight, like you're supposed to be using the machine in conjunction with your body. Like the machine is like assisting you in the exercise. And there actually are like a lot of exercises where it's like, the lighter you go, the more challenging it's going to be. But it's like men come in with this mindset where they're like, I have to have the
Well, yeah,
heaviest weight. Like,
of course, typical do behavior. Plus, they see these women out probably outperforming them because they're.
yeah.
Plus, people don't realize women do have different muscle groups that work differently. I remember even being back in school, like they would have, there's something weird where you, like you bend over, touch your head to a wall and try to lift a chair. I
Yeah.
don't remember the specifics, but girls could do it and guys can't.
Yeah. Just like something to do with the
Something with the
pelvis.
hips. And they would purposely, the teacher would do this every year and make all these guys look weak, like they can't lift the chair. And the girls are all doing it no problem. But for sure, when it comes to flexibility and agility, you guys have advantages with a lot of those muscle groups. It doesn't sound like a brute strength type thing. I like that you said you just hold space for people. You know, the easiest people to be around let you be you, right? Like, and that's the whole, I guess, point of coming to this thing. It's like you're not looking for more structure. You're looking to kind of escape the structure and be comfortable in your own skin. And the communal aspect sounds nice. I think that most people, if they were missing something or if they're searching for something, it's not just connection, but it's everybody wants to be understood. I found no matter what your personality type is, I think everybody is frustrated by feeling like they're not being understood or they just feel different. Or so to be able to connect with a whole group of people and be vulnerable and be yourself, it's got to be very freeing.
It's so interesting, like kind of what we were saying before, where it's like so many people enter into experiences from that very egoic state. It takes some time to like work through that and get past that for some people. And so it's like my classes like are not easy. So when I say like that I'm holding space for people, it's like, yeah, but I'm also gonna like this, it's gonna get uncomfortable.
You're going to push them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how you respond to that, I'm going to allow. But like, you know, within the boundaries of like the space I'm holding for everyone. Like a perfect example, I started teaching this class on Saturdays. It's a 75-minute hot yoga class, which 75 minutes in the heat is already a challenge in and of itself. Yeah. And this was how I originally came up with the idea for body language, was that I wanted to like brand that class as something different than just like a standard hot yoga class, because I wanted people to know when they read the class description that they were going to get a unique experience that may be out of their comfort zone. It may be a little bit different than what they're used to. And so that was where the idea for the branding of body language came from. And one time this woman came, I think it was her and her friend, and they were not like the usual people that are like my regulars are like now at this point, you know, jacked and like they got like they can do all the moves and they're good at it and whatever. And she was like maybe like her first time doing yoga, not at all like the normal. I think she was maybe like a little older, and she had the best time laughing at herself when she's trying to do all this stuff. And it's like after the class was over, she was so happy and she was like, that was so fun. She's like, I couldn't do any of it, but I loved it. And I was like, that attitude is so rare to come across, where you're just like, that's what I hope everyone would feel, where it's like, who cares if you can't do this perfectly? Nobody's caring but you. And so your perspective is a choice that you're making, where it's like, Am I mad at the teacher because she's making me do all this crazy stuff that I've never tried before? Am I mad at myself that I can't do it? Am I mad that I came to it's like so many people are like, ugh, so tense in
It's
it. And it's like you could just choose to like be joyful just because you can.
it's
And we
it's
always have that choice, you know?
it's the relinquishing the control, you know.
Yeah.
That's the part I relate to also, and something I've been really really working on with myself is the openness. I read a book not long ago. It talked a lot about being open in the
Yeah.
sense that it is okay to feel things, right? Good, bad, ugly, whatever. Like we're supposed to feel everything. And people are the mode they're in is resistance. That's what
Yeah.
it is. It's like everybody you run into. And I'm very resistant too, but I've tried and I've become way more open to just kind of feeling everything because what's the difference? And there should never be any shame or embarrassment about feelings.
Yeah.
I think that's everybody's default mode. It's like they feel something and it's like cringe to them. There's this internal like, oh, I'm not supposed to, like, I can't express myself in front of these people or I can't, but like, what's the point of not? You're going to be dead. You know, like we were talking about earlier, you're going to be dead one day. You get hit by a bus tomorrow. You spent your whole life guarding your who you really are and your true feelings and being too ashamed or scared or embarrassed to just kind of let it all out. What's the difference anyway?
Well, I've heard it explained also too, like that a lot of times we add this layer of judgment where it's like, I'm angry, but now I'm mad at myself for being angry.
Yes.
I'm angry and that's wrong that I'm angry. And so then it becomes this like conflict instead of it just being like,
Yes.
I'm angry, that's okay. And now I'm not going to be angry anymore or whatever it is. We move through it instead of being like in judgment.
You totally nailed it. It's the reaction to the feeling rather than the feeling itself every single time. And it's the expectation of happiness. This idea that people think I'm supposed to be happy. I don't feel happy all the time, therefore something's wrong with me.
Yes.
Rather than I'm supposed to feel pain and fear and anxiety and all that's the human condition. I'm supposed to feel those things just the same way I can feel joy. It's a wide gamut and just feel it all and let it go through you. And when you resist it, that's when you stay there for a long, long time. You're always trying to push it away. It's always trying to come in. You could just go let it in and then let it go out the back. It's never you're never gonna push the stuff away.
I think that's like a huge thing that's like we struggle with in today's like modern world is like being a victim of even your own mind, your own thoughts to the point where it's like I have to seek something in the external to like to deal with myself, you know, regulate my own emotions or my thoughts or whatever it is. And it's like believing that is like making you dependent. Like you're just constantly outsourcing everything to the external to the point that you're like dependent on so many different things that are outside of you. It's really dangerous. It's like we're living in a very like strange time. Just saying that, like I saw someone on TikTok the other day who made a video that had gone viral and all these people in support of this person who was not like, we're not talking about like, you know, those crazy like libs of TikTok, like those kind of, this was just like a normal looking person and all these people are in agreement with him. And it's just a commonly accepted belief now that if you say things similar to what we're saying about like, you know, personal sovereignty, like taking, you know, personal accountability, this is now being aligned with being a Nazi. Like the alt-right pipeline is like believing that you can like have self-awareness now. And I'm like, this is a thing that people are saying that they fully believe. They believe this. And it's not a small percentage of the population that thinks that either. And that's kind of frightening to think about sometimes.
Well, and it's also opposite of reality.
Yes.
Right? So it's like the actual Nazis, I try to explain this to people all the time. They didn't want more sovereignty. They didn't want freer speech. They didn't want people owning whatever weapons. They wanted all the opposite. And it's funny because now, yes, if you argue in favor of, hey, let me have more freedom, Let me say what I want. Let me write what I want. Let me own whatever weapons I want. They go, well, you're a Nazi. Yeah, you're the totalitarian, authoritarian. It's like, what I'm suggesting is the opposite of authoritarianism. Yeah, everything's become political. That's for sure. Things that didn't used to be political. Everyone used to kind of agree on the basics. And then there was always the crazy fringes, and everyone just kind of ignored them. And I think we made a huge mistake by listening to and giving the crazy people legitimacy.
Yes.
And allowing them to even enter into these, because there's always been small groups of people arguing in favor of nonsensical things, but everyone just patted them on the head and they went about their day and did what they were going to. Nobody was entertaining that stuff.
Yeah.
You're talking about, the victimhood of it. That's something that's changed in society, is that people want to be grouped into a marginalized group, or, to be considered a victim. People wear it like a badge of honor now. Or I think a lot of people are just so lost and disillusioned, and they go, well, look at these people getting all this attention and they've been marginalized. I'm going to identify with them too.
I agree with you. The victim mentality is very dangerous. And it's like in that video that I saw on TikTok the other day, it was like talking about this girl who's like a very well-known influencer, has millions of followers, and she does a lot of kind of like spirituality type content. And she had like a complete meltdown on TikTok, like total manic episode. And it really was like unsettling for me. Like, it just made me think about a lot of things about just how like social media is affecting people. I think there's like just this, we keep splitting in this like reality of like words not meaning the same. Like, we're not living in the same objective reality anymore. And it's like,
correct.
Everything on social media can so quickly become warped and toxic, so that it's like even things that are like actually good in their inherent nature, if they're used in the right way, or if you find them with the right intent, even through social media, those things get twisted and kind of destroyed, and like everything is just, there's no Adam Carolla always called it reality on reality's terms. There's certain things that just are. Mm-hmm.
I feel like everyone else is kind of just signaling to the crazy people. Yeah, we need to get back to, I am seeing a backlash with it lately.
I think that it's like enough though. Like, even with like
I think it will snowball. I think the next gen. I think the very young people, the millennials are bad, right? Not bad, but they're bad with this stuff. The millennials are really into this shit. They're the biggest signalers of all. They love it. Yeah. They're the first ones putting the symbols up on their social and everything else. The older Gen Z kids, but I feel like, and I don't know a lot of them, but I feel like the younger kids, because the generations do backlash against all that stupid stuff their parents were into.
Yeah.
I don't think they're down with all that nonsense. That's my hope. And I do see more people, even on the left, maybe different celebrities, comedians for sure have kind of always been on the front line of the cancel culture thing and all that. You're seeing more people who are definitely, they call Joe Rogan alt-right now. The guy's as liberal as it gets. He's certainly one. Bill Maher, those kind of guys, they're left, but they'll never be down with that crazy stuff. And they're finally at least speaking out about. You can be so dismissive of stupid stuff and never give it air in the first place. And I think now that we gave it all that air, we're kind of in a place where it's almost like I always say, you wouldn't argue with a small child, right? If the kid just said, hey, I just saw a blue bear fly out of the sky, and you go like, okay, Timmy, you're not going to debate the kid about how the blue bear didn't really come out of the sky, right? But we started doing that. And I think when credible people debate people who aren't, you're giving them credibility just by even entering into some of these combos with them.
But that's why I think that there's like, there's sometimes a sinister agenda behind a lot of these things that are going on. Like, I think that like, there's a lot of layers to it.
No, listen, there are definitely people pulling strings at the top that they want a couple things. They want the divisiveness. They want the polarization. That's why I keep telling people too, when you react to that stuff, That's what they want you to do.
Yeah.
When they come in with a lot of that, they're not doing it so that you are really sweet. They want you to be combative and have a reaction to it and create more and more divisiveness. So I think most people don't actually believe that stuff.
Yeah.
It is a very small group kind of pulling the strings on all that.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like afraid to go against the crowd.
Completely afraid, and they're afraid of the people who will actually attack them if they go against it. The people who claim to be the most tolerant and progressive are the least tolerant.
Yes.
I mean, not to make this into a whole political show, but here's what I would say. Everybody really does want the same stuff from a human condition standpoint, right? They want the peace and the stability and their families to be healthy, and they want to like be connected and understood and find love and all these things. And the rest of it really is a lot of noise. But we never did have people preying upon that before in the way I don't think they could, because they didn't have the vehicle. What are you going to put out a newspaper with the controversial article? How many people are, but you can beat people over the head now 24/7 with whatever your agenda is. And it's just nonstop. And they're smart about it, and it's very insidious.
Yes.
But I stand by to this day, if you went somehow to everyone's house and hooked them up to a foolproof lie detector and asked them about believing a lot of the stuff they profess to believe, you'd still have a very small percentage of people in this country that actually believe that stuff on a deep level, in my opinion. And that's what we have to get away from, is stop kowtowing to this noisy, on all sides. There's going to always be crazy people that want to rile everyone up. And stop worrying about if those people are going to get upset with you, and just be the adult in the room. Go about the business we've been going about. We always just did that. We always went about our business, and we let the crazy people yell.
Yes.
I've kept you too long. Is there anything else you want to tell people before we wrap up? You can remind people where to find you again, and if there's anything else you wanted to point people to.
Well, you can find me at A State of Emily on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And also astateofemily.com is where I have my bio and a little more about me, and my online class website where you can actually take class with me online. I have like hundreds of classes available, Pilates and yoga. And I also have my clothing line, which I designed, which is these little bodysuits. So those are on my website as well.
Very nice. Go to that site, astateofemily.com. I might take an online yoga course myself, just to ease into it. How's that work? You're on like video with a group of people. Can you see everyone else? Can they see you? What are we doing there?
So I'm not currently doing live classes. Right now they're pre-recorded. So if you sign up like for a membership, you have access to all of the whole library of classes. I was doing online classes for a while during the pandemic, but kind of tapered off now that the studios are back open. But maybe I'll get into that again at some point.
And you're out in California?
Yes.
All right, and you give classes there live in-person studio?
Yes, I teach at a studio called Bohem in downtown LA, and I teach Pilates at a studio called DR Pilates on Larchmont, and I'm starting a new studio called LA Springs in Echo Park next month.
Congratulations. So if I have any SoCal listeners, check those out too, and let me know how that is. I might get into it. If I do Pilates, I'm not telling anybody.
You gotta tell me.
I'll tell you privately that I took Pilates. I might get into yoga though. And thank you. I've taken up a lot of your time, and that was a really good combo. And guys, check her out on social, A State of Emily. Check out her website, the cool bodysuits, get some nice clothes. Even guys listening, you get some stuff for your ladies. And that's it. Emily, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And for everyone listening, I hope y'all had a great weekend and a peaceful, easy week so far. And I will be back in about a week with some more great guests. And that's it. I really appreciate y'all tons. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you soon. Be good.